When I was 16 years old, I got my first car, and every single weekend I would go to a place called Sound Advice over in Tampa, Florida. I would go through each one of their demo rooms. They had surround sound setups, a lot of B&W speakers. They had clip speakers and various other brands. And I would sit and I would demo for just hours upon hours upon hours because I loved music and I loved home theater. And as I would sit there and listen and watch these movies, and then as a 16-year-old with a job at Ponderosa making minimum wage $4.25 an hour, I would look at the price tag of the speakers and think, I'll never be able to afford this. Fast forward many, many years later, at the age of 47, I never dreamed that I would have a dedicated theater room to where I could enjoy that experience in my own home. Many of you watching this video may be at the point to where you're just beginning to build or maybe even dream about having a home theater. In this video, I want to pose a question. Are you looking at home theater as a destination or a journey? In this video, I want to challenge you to look at home theater as a journey and not just an ultimate end-game destination. Now, quite a while ago, I made a video just kind of documenting my own personal journey in home theater. And this has taken place literally over a decade or two. And so I'll link that video down in the description if you haven't seen that. But it literally walks you through my entire process of where I started with a really small TV, a couple of speakers, and then just began to build this thing over time. Sometimes when we look at building a home theater or building one in our living room or a bedroom, honestly, it can get either overwhelming, and sometimes we can look at it and go, man, that is just so cost prohibitive. I'm never going to be able to afford that and build that. One thing I've always tried to do with you guys on this channel is encourage you, no matter what space you have, whether you've got a bedroom, a living room, a garage, bonus room, or a dedicated space like I do. Now this room here is 13 feet wide, 19 feet deep, 10-foot ceilings. It's not a massive room by any means. I would consider this a very medium-sized theater room. And this wasn't a theater room on the floor plan, it was a media room. More than likely the architect that built this home was thinking, okay, this would be a good place to put a pool table, ping pong table, maybe a game room for the kids. They can come in here and put their toys, and that way it'll keep it out of the living room. I don't think they really had in mind somebody's going to put a dedicated theater room in this. But when Jessica and I looked at this home 15 years ago, maybe 16 years ago, we looked at a blank room, and yes, it was smaller than what I originally wanted. I wanted like a 15-foot wide by 25-foot deep room, but I looked at it and I went, I think I can make this work. You know? And honestly, I didn't even know how I was going to make it work. I didn't have all the speakers. I didn't have all the equipment. I think at that time I had 3 speakers. Now that I think about it, I didn't even have that. I remember building a website for my first 2 what I consider real speakers, the Klipsch RF83s. And then over time, I got the center channel. And then I began to look on Craigslist. Back then we didn't have OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace. But I was on Craigslist like every day just looking for crazy deals and stuff I could afford. And I eventually bought a pair of surrounds, and then later on, about probably even a year later, I bought rear surrounds. And then it wasn't till several years later that I began to even think about adding Atmos speakers, cutting holes in my ceiling and installing those, and then way down the road adding acoustic panels and upgrading my screen from 103 to 150 inch. And so this process has really taken me in this home 16 years, almost 17 years to get to where I am now. And I think sometimes, man, we watch videos on YouTube, especially like home theater tours that I do on the channel, and you might look at somebody that has put hundreds of thousands of dollars in a dedicated space, and you're like, man, that'll never be me. Well, number one, don't ever say that, because you never know where you're going to be financially 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road. So it could happen. But even if it doesn't, realize that you don't have to have mega bucks put into a home theater. There are so many different ways to save money, to reduce the cost. I remember when we were building this home, the first thing I did was reach out to a local AV home theater installer just to get an idea, all right, what would it cost for you to build me a dedicated theater room? And they sent me back a quote, and I think at that time, again, this was 16 years ago, I think the quote was like $30,000 or $40,000. Now, granted, this room was already built. This was just equipment. This was just them coming and calibrating it and setting it up. And I'm going, holy cow, that's a lot of money. And I knew I was not going to be able to afford that. And so I made a decision at that point in time that I'm just going to build this over time. I'm going to build it as I go. I'm going to build it as funds become available. Sometimes I would find Youthman deals on Craigslist and I would buy them because they were so ridiculously cheap. And I would use them for sometimes months or years. But I would continually be looking for those good deals, those crazy Youthman deals. And when those deals would pop up, and if it was an upgrade to what I had, then I would buy that, and then I would turn around and sell what I had. Sometimes I would even make money on the deal, but I would never lose money on it. I would never buy something at that time. I guess I just had this rule. I would only buy things that if I were to sell it tomorrow, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I would at least get my money back from it. I didn't want to lose money. Sometimes we buy something, the latest, greatest, and then realize it doesn't really meet our needs, and so if we sell it, and then we lose money on it, and then we have to buy something more expensive, and you're always in this like negative, instead of just kind of being in the positive. So I just did some things like that, and then I, instead of hiring out somebody to come and build my riser, me and a buddy said, you know what, let me look up some information. So I was on the AVS forum, and I would find guys that were building them, and I looked at them, I'm like, that doesn't look that hard. Now granted, I'm not super handy, I didn't have a lot of tools, but I had friends that were. And so I would just ask them, hey, would you be willing to come and help me build this? And they were like, absolutely, man, that sounds really cool. That'd be a lot of fun. And so together we'd work on the weekend to put this thing together and build it out. And then there were other parts of the theater room that, like my cabinet in the front, I had a friend of mine build that. I don't know how to build this cabinet. I think it's gorgeous. It really, I don't know anybody that's got one just like this. Now you may look at it and go, Michael, I'd paint that black. Well, that's you. I'm not painting it black because my friend built this cabinet literally with his own hands. Everything is handmade by him. There wasn't anything that he went to Lowe's and picked up parts. It was like he bought raw, unfinished wood, planed it himself, sanded it himself. There's even hand carvings all over it. And so it's got like his fingerprints all over this thing. And so for me to paint that black would almost be a disservice to the love and the passion that he poured into my front wall and my cabinet. And so when you look at that, the changes that I've made over the past 16, 17 years, and my theater room isn't done. But here's the thing, I've never once looked at where does this end? And it's not that I'm chasing a rabbit. Sometimes we get in the habit of just chasing the next latest, greatest thing. And honestly, guys, that's just an endless cycle because you're never going to catch the rabbit. It's always going to elude you. I'm not after a rabbit. I'm not chasing certain things. As deals come along, as new technology changes, I may or may not upgrade to it. I just take it a day at a time. But in every part of my journey, I've just made a choice to enjoy what I had. And so if you're watching this video and you have a sound bar, man, enjoy it. For a long time, I used to really just look down on sound bars. I think sound bars have their place. I don't think they're amazing, most of them. Now, there are some that are better than others. But the reality is not everybody has the budget for big towers and massive subwoofers and Atmos speakers. But the reality is that maybe the soundbar fits for you in your situation right now. But maybe down the road, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe you begin to buy 2 speakers and an AVR. And you just start there. And then down the road, as funds become available, or maybe you find a good used deal, you buy your first subwoofer. Enjoy that. Rock it out, man. 2.1 system is so much better than any TV speakers or any soundbar. And enjoy it. And then maybe down the road, add you some side surrounds. Add some rear surrounds. Sometimes you'll find a good deal on something and you'll start off maybe with bookshelf speakers. Once you buy your towers, then move the bookshelves to your side surrounds or your rear surrounds. But in each stage, man, I just want to encourage you, enjoy the journey. I think that's so important. So many times we just get caught up in looking at somebody else on Facebook and looking at their system and going, woe is me, I don't have that, or man, I wish I could have that. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about their system. Celebrate their system. I mean, if they've got a kicking system, man, go, man, that's awesome. Love your setup. Don't get jealous over it. There's nothing to be jealous over. You enjoy what you have with your friends, with your family, and you just crank it and enjoy it. Whether it's 2-channel, whether it's movies, sit back and enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. Now, a couple times a month, I jump on a Zoom call with my patrons, and I love hearing about their journey. I love when they share that, you know, they're upgrading their projector, or they're getting their first projector, or maybe they've just moved from a sound bar to a pair of speakers, or they've always wanted to upgrade their subwoofer, and so now they're finally at that point. And so I just love celebrating with them and helping them to see that where they're at in their journey is 100% okay. Don't get in a rush. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process, and don't compare where you're at in your journey to someone else's journey. Now, I'd love to hear where you're at in your home theater journey. Let me know down in the comments below. I read as many comments as possible, and I try to reply to as many of those as well. And also, if you're interested in hanging out, probably every 2 weeks, we try to meet together on Zoom, on Patreon. You can join at patreon.com/Youthman. Now, if you're interested in seeing my home theater journey, check out this video right here. And I'd also love for you to join us at M-Wave 2023. I'll have links for it down in the description below. As always, you guys be blessed, and we will catch you in the next video.